I'm going to ask you to try not to lose all of your faith in government when you hear this next story, because that's certainly the reaction I had as I was reading this article. Actually, there's two articles, but, you know, you just get that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach, and you're like, oh, how could we have let this happen? So first, look at this from Mediaite. The White House cancels GM joint venture to mass produce ventilators over fears its price tag could exceed $1 billion, or 0.05% of latest stimulus bill. Now, since this headline, I have good news, which is they flipped and now they will make the ventilators. So that's super important, and credit where credit is due. However, way too late. Way too late. Because we're already at the point where we have a ventilator shortage. Where I live in New York City is getting hammered. Queens is getting hammered. They're filling up the dead bodies in a refrigerated truck that they're parking outside of the hospital. That's how bad it is. The morgues have already overflown. You already have people who need ventilators and don't have them. We're at that point already. So for them to just decide now, oh, no, right, yes, the ventilators, the National Defense Production Act or whatever it's called, we're going to use that now. See, what happened before is Trump said, I'm gonna invoke the National Defense Protection Act, and then he didn't order anybody to do anything. And everybody's sitting around, even the heads of industry are sitting around like, he just invoked the act, but we're not being told, all right, you guys make ventilators, you guys make masks, you guys make hazmat suits. No, they didn't do any of that. You know, you guys make, chloroquine, you guys make whatever, fill in the blank with antiviral drugs and all that stuff. You guys make this, they didn't do any of that. So he invoked the act, and then he's like, beautiful weather today, right? Yeah, I think beautiful weather. What are you doing? What are you doing? Go, 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 go. So, turns out, this is what we learned. We learned that Trump and his little economic minions, his merry band of thugs, people like Larry Kudlow and Steve Mnuchin, Goldman Sachs lackey, they're sitting around, they're going, oh, look, come on, bro, $1 billion to make ventilators? That seems pricey to me. I think we're going to shut this whole thing down. They just passed a $2 trillion, actually it's not even $2 trillion, it's really $6 trillion, $4.5 trillion. They just passed a $4.5 trillion bailout bill, and they look at a $1 billion bill for ventilators, and they're like, that's too expensive. So this is like, to a tragic and comedic degree, what we tell you guys all the time, which is whenever the price tag is for you in any way, shape, or form, Medicare, Medicaid, anti-poverty programs, Social Security, whenever it's programs for you, like, I don't know, I think we need to pinch our pennies. But when it's for war or when it's for corporate bailouts, it's just make it rain. It doesn't matter. Spend as much as you want. Money's not an issue. Money isn't even real. We'll just move the decimal point over at the Federal Reserve and it's over. It's fine. No big deal. We just printed it. Who cares? Money printer go brrrr. That's it. But again, because of them dragging their feet, people are going to die. So congratulations on that. But I haven't even gotten to the worst part. Now you're probably going, what? It gets worse than that? Oh, it gets worse than that. So, the New York Times also broke this incredible news that around 2008, the CDC made a deal with a small medical device company called Newport Medical Instruments. And the whole point of this was for an exact situation like we're in right now. So, I believe swine flu hit in 2009, but you did have the health experts doing their job and saying, listen, we're on borrowed time for a pandemic. Like, we're going to get hit with another pandemic, and, you know, we're overdue for a bad one. I mean, look at the 1918 Spanish flu. Millions of people dead. So we're going to get hit with a bad pandemic. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So we need to have a stockpile of the necessary supplies, including ventilators. So the government was, they had a contract. They were ready to go. Again, they had picked a small company. I believe it's a Japanese company that was headquartered in California called Newport Medical Instruments. And what they were supposed to do is make a smaller, cheaper, easier to use ventilator because ventilators are, a little bit complicated to use and they're on the bigger side. So the government wanted to prepare for an exact situation like we have right now with COVID-19, where they have smaller, cheaper, easier to use ventilators. And, they doled out the millions of dollars, did the contract. So what happened? Well, they made their prototypes and they showed the government. Government's like, ooh, yeah, I like that. That's good. It's working good. It's nice. As soon as they were about to mass produce them, a big company, medical device company called Covidien, swept in, bought up Newport Medical Instruments, the company that was supposed to mass produce these smaller, cheaper, easier to use ventilators, and then they canceled the federal contract. So the government goes through all this trouble, contracts with a small company, wants to make the ventilators, pick the prototype. As soon as they're about to start making them, a bigger company buys out the smaller company and cancels the federal contract, which further delays the U.S. getting the ventilators that we desperately need. Now, you might be thinking, well, first of all, I didn't know they could do that. A bigger company could just buy it and then shut the whole thing down. Apparently, yes, they can. But why did they do it? You ready for this? That bigger company is one of the companies that makes the older, bigger, more expensive ventilators. So they bought their competition to shut the whole thing down because they wanted to keep making profits selling the shittier ventilators. And here we are today. We do not have a giant stockpile of ventilators. We have some, but not nearly enough. We have 160,000 total in the country, and we need 960,000. And we would have had maybe 100,000 more, or maybe a little less, if it wasn't for Covidien, the medical device company, buying up the smaller company and shutting down the whole process. Here we are. A bigger company ruined the whole thing. The government going along. Apparently, I think the government had to approve Covidien buying out the smaller company. So the government is also to blame. I'm sure there's corruption involved. There's definitely corporatism involved. There's definitely monopoly power involved. But as a result of all of these problems, here we are. A giant lack of ventilators during a pandemic. A lack of tests as well. A lack of protective equipment as well. We are quite literally handling this worse than any other developed country in the world. And our trajectory shows it. We already have more cases than anybody in the world. New York City is now the epicenter of the pandemic.